Emerald Zoysia versus St. Augustine. If I was going to make a comparison between the Emerald Zoysia, you kind of have to lump Cavalier Zoysia in there as well. They're both fine-bladed Zoysias that we carry, and it's very hard to tell the difference between the two. But if you're going to compare the fine-bladed Zoysias to St. Augustine, they are worlds apart, I would say. The St. Augustine is what we are all familiar with here along the Texas Gulf Coast, greater Houston area here. It's the thicker bladed. It grows with the runners that it sends out, and it's got the real aggressive growth habits. It can get up in your flower beds, and it grows out onto the sidewalk with those runners and everything. Whereas the fine-bladed zoysias like the Emerald and Cavalier are very fine-bladed. They're I would say kind of on par with some of the fine-bladed Bermuda grasses that you might see on a well-manicured golf course. They are, I guess, their biggest difference. The first thing you're going to notice is a huge difference in texture between the two, and if you had them, you would also notice the growth habit of it. The fine-bladed zoysia is not going to encroach into flower beds. It's going to kind of stay put. You're probably not going to have to mow it as often because it does grow slower. That slow growth habit has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are the less mowing, not growing where it's not supposed to, up in your flower beds and out onto the sidewalks and whatnot. The disadvantage to that slower growth habit is that when there are issues with an area, the grass thins out for some reason, whether it's because of too much traffic in the area or fungus damage or insect damage or anything like that. It's going to recuperate a lot slower. You're never going to see, for example, fine-bladed zoysia out on a sports field. They want to use the Bermuda grasses because they recover the fastest. They heal up the fastest. It would take forever for a fine-bladed zoysia to like the Emerald and Cavalier to do that. So like I said, the biggest difference would be aesthetics and the feel of it. The St. Augustines have the real coarse leaves that we're all used to. Some people kind of describe it as a little itchy, and it's just kind of the same old, same old. The zoysias, all of them, are very aesthetically pleasing. All the ones we carry are very aesthetically pleasing. They look different, so people that want a little something nicer and something that looks a little different for a specific area, there certainly can certainly be an answer for that. You just need to take in consideration the differences in care. Another thing that comes to mind is shade tolerance. The fine-bladed zoysias have fairly good shade tolerance. They can survive on 4 or 5 hours of direct sunlight, whereas the Raleigh St. Augustine needs 6 or 7 hours of direct sunlight. But there is also, you should keep in mind, a Palmetto St. Augustine that looks very similar, that can survive on about the same amount of sunlight as the fine-bladed zoysias, which is the 4 or 5 hours of direct sunlight. And so that's all things to keep in mind when looking at deciding between the two of them. I guess cost would be another one. The St. Augustines are significantly less expensive than any of the zoysias, whether we're talking about the Palmetto or the regular Raleigh St. Augustine. They are both significantly less expensive than any of the 3 zoysias, and specifically the Emerald and the Cavalier. So if you have any questions about any of them, please give us a call and we'll see what we can do to guide you in the right direction.